Hello everyone, and welcome to a wild game between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. It's a game from round 7 of the 2018 Sinquefield Cup, and there's really a lot at stake in this game. If, for example, Caruana wins this game, then he will overtake Magnus Carlsen in the live ratings, and if he finishes the tournament nicely, then he might become the new #1 chess player in the world, ratings-wise. And also, it's a pretty big thing for the tournament standings. Fabiano Caruana is currently the sole leader with half a point ahead of everyone else. A win for Magnus Carlsen would definitely go huge for him in this tournament, and also to increase the gap between the ratings. But if this is even a small taste of what we can expect in November, then November is definitely going to be a great month. So before we check out the game, we do have a nice photo challenge. So in honor of Caruana's defense, who is the gentleman in the photo here? So there you have it, best of luck to everyone. Now let's check out the game. Carlsen opened with e4 and Caruana replied with e5, so no doubt we will see the Petrov defense. Knight to f3, and we do have the Petrov defense on the board. Knight captures on e5, Carlsen goes for the classical variation. We have d6, knight goes back, and now knight captures on e4. And now knight to c3. The Nimzo variation, and also my favorite against the Petrov. We have knight captures, d captures on c3, and now bishop to e7. Bishop to e3, knight to c6, bishop to c4. We have castles, and now comes queen to d2. Carlsen signalizes that he is ready to castle either kingside or queenside, depends on the mood. Bishop to f5, and here Carlsen does castle queenside, and as you can see we have opposite castles on the board, which means Carlsen will want to push his pawns on the king side and attack Caruana's king, and Caruana will of course try to do the same on the queen side. Queen to d7, of course Caruana wants to prevent Carlsen from starting to push his pawns. King to b1, safety of the king comes first, of course, and now rook f to e8. And here we have h4 already by Carlsen. Bishop to f8, we have h5 and h6. And here it's a very nice moment in the game. Now, how do you start to push your pawns here and start attacking? The bishop is on a very nice diagonal here, eyeing the f7 pawn. You want to push g4 as soon as possible. So what are your options here? As they mentioned in the live feed, knight h4 is a very nice idea. Attacking the bishop here, knight to g6 can also be played if depending on what black plays, as the f7 pawn is pinned. But here black can go bishop e6, and after captures, black is perfectly fine here. The queen is preventing white from pushing g4, and you can't really push f3 and then go g4 because your bishop on e3 would be hanging. Another thing you can consider is knight to h2, and then you prepare g4 or f3 g4, but then you lose control of the e5 square, and then with knight to e5, here black really puts a knight on a beautiful square, and now the position of your bishop that is undefended on c4 becomes questionable. And another thing you can do after this h6 move, you can go bishop to b3, but here black can simply push a5, start attacking this bishop, or even better, go knight a5 and eliminate this strong piece. So here Carlsen plays a move that was really praised by everyone, especially by Yasser. He plays bishop back to e2. Yasser describes this as a Karpovian move, where it seems like a bishop was very active on c4, but in fact it wasn't, as you saw that the knight from e5 could really challenge it. So simply a move with the bishop back. And now Carlsen will prepare perhaps knight h2 and then starts pushing his pawn. Also the bishop from e2 will be also eyeing the g4 square. So first Caruana plays bishop to g4. Now if the knight is moved, Caruana can exchange bishops. Knight h2 was played. Now Carlsen attacks the bishop twice. Bishop captures, queen captures. And here knight to e5, preparing to bring the knight over to c4. And it's a very nice idea, because now if Carlsen starts pushing his pawns carelessly, then Caruana can indeed play knight to f5 with a double attack on the bishop here, and after an exchange is made here, captures, knight f3, and the other rook can come into the game, for example c6, and then the rook can easily the rooks can easily be doubled on the e file. So it would be a perfectly nice position for black. After knight e5, Carlsen plays another move that once again impressed everyone, bishop to c1. A waiting move, but later this bishop can really become a powerful piece. Queen to c6, here Fabiano prepares to protect the knight, preparing knight to c4 basically. But okay, Carlsen plays f4. We do have knight to c4. The c4 square is guarded now. Queen to d3, and here queen to e4. Here Fabi wants to exchange queens immediately. I thought, okay, perhaps even a move like rook to e4 could be played. Seems like a very nice move. Prepares to double files, to double rook on d file. But here Carlsen can simply start pushing his pawns on the king side. After you double, g5 is coming, and it's a really nice setup here for white. Captures, h6 is coming. So very nice position for white. So okay, Fabi goes for queen to e4. He wants to trade queens, but Carlsen ignores him. He pushes g4. And he says, if you want to trade queens, you can capture my queen, but then I will undouble here, and my position will improve very nicely here. So okay, g4. We have knight to e3, attacking Carlsen's rook on d1, and now rook d to e1. The strongest move, Carlsen plays it pretty much instantly. Queen captures on d3, c captures on d3, and now knight to d5 as the knight was attacked twice. And rook e to g1. Here, also a move that kind of, moves away from the principles of chess, as rooks do belong on open files. But here, while the rook is on e file, you can simply exchange all the rooks, and then white really won't have anything to push for advantage with, so instead he goes to rook e to g1. Places the rooks on the g and h file. He wants to push g5, open up some of the files, and then pressure the black king. And in this position, Carlsen had 28 minutes on the clock, while Caruana had 23 minutes on the clock, and it's only move 23, so still 17 or 18 moves to be made for Carlsen or Fabiano. So okay, rook to e6. Rook to e2 was also possible, but for some reason Caruana didn't enjoy it. The rook is a bit more active on e2, of course, but on e2 it's not gonna be an active member of the king's defensive squad, as g5 is coming. So okay, he goes rook to e6. Carlsen pushes g5, and here we have knight to e7. It seems like king to h7 was a better move here, but even after king to h7, f5 is coming, and then it's really not a pleasant position for black. Here, Caruana played knight to e7, and Carlsen immediately grabbed g captures on h6. And it was in this position that Carlsen went into the confessional booth. The confessional booth is something they're having during the Grand Chess Tour, where a player is, picked up from the board. He goes into the confessional booth, and then he discusses openly his position, so the viewers can enjoy it. Something like, if you play Texas Hold'em, the viewers know which cards the players have, so everything is out in the open. And it's also very interesting because you can hear what the players are thinking about. And here, Carlsen just went, hush, quiet the haters, as stating that he will win this game. Don't interrupt him. Here, of course, you cannot capture with the pawn. The pawn is pinned. Caruana played rook captures on h6, and everyone was really impressed by this move. Everyone thought king to h7 would be played, and Caruana would be down a pawn, because here f5 was expected, and it was played instantly by Carlsen. And now you run into a lot of problems here. For example, if you capture here, you lose the game. Knight to g4, and you're lost. You capture rook captures on h1, and now you don't recapture immediately, but rather knight to f6 check. The pawn is of course pinned. You cannot capture. You cannot go to h7. You have to go to h8, and now rook captures on h1 will be checkmate. On the other hand, after knight to g4, even if you don't capture on h1, you could capture the pawn, for example, but still you get knight to h6 check. The pawn is again pinned. You have to move the king. Knight captures on f5, opens up a discovered check. You move the king, captures. You're down a whole rook. White is completely winning. So Caruana calculated precisely. He played rook to h7. And here, after some consideration, Carlsen played knight to g4. Knight to g4, a move that will cost him dearly later, as if you've seen the live coverage, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I suggest you check it out, as it was really a thriller. Here, knight to g4, he thought that wins. He thought this wins the game. But instead, it was f6 that would have most likely won him the game if Caruana didn't play, like, I don't know, 20 engine moves in a row. Because after this move, of course, the g pawn is still pinned. Let's say knight d5. Now comes knight to g4. And now, unlike the variation that happened on the board, the knight is misplaced here on d5, and the king is on g8, not on the h file, as you'll see later. Here, g6, c4, kicking the knight even further back, knight b6, now comes h captures on g6. And now it all depends on what you play. If you play f captures, then you get rook captures. King captures and f7 now. The rook is coming to f1, this pawn on f7 will be guarded, bishop is coming all the way to c3 to control this diagonal, and it's most likely black will get crushed here. On the other hand, after h captures on g6, you could go for rook captures on h1, but this simply loses a pawn, as black has this Zwischenzug, or an in-between move. G captures on f7 with check, king captures, and only now rook captures on h1, which leaves white with an extra pawn. But here, Carlsen did not find, after knight e7, this f6 move. He played knight to g4, not now f6 immediately, so knight to g4 was played, and here Caruana played king to h8. Carlsen did play f6 now, and now knight to g8 was played, and it was in this position that Carlsen realized that, okay, there's really no breakthrough here, and he really spent a lot of time here. And not only that, one of the reasons, as he said later in an interview with Maurice, one of the reasons he played knight g4 and not knight to f6 isn't because he didn't see this line. He didn't see an idea after knight to f5. The knight from f5 will now be defending the g7 pawn. But although there's no clear refutation of the knight to f5 move, simply rook to g5 attacking the knight, but then knight comes to h6, and well, the idea is that black's position is really funny and that white is better. This is basically it. But Carlsen said he found the refutation against knight f5 after he played the knight g4, but what he had in mind after that, I have no idea. But okay, f5, rook to h7, knight g4 as was played, now king h8, and we have f6, but now knight to g8, and here the game continues. Here Carlsen really spent all of his time, as he was much better on the clock, some 5 minutes ahead. Now after f captures on g7, rook captures on g7, and bishop to e3, preparing bishop to d4. Caruana stops this immediately, c5, and now Carlsen spent really all of his time. He went from 9 minutes to a minute and a half. So here he played bishop to f4 with a minute and a half on the clock, where Caruana had 9 minutes. And it's very interesting. Probably if he had more time, he might have considered this bishop to d1 move, simply moving it back, preparing c4, and yet again bringing this bishop to this very strong diagonal. But like I said, he spent all of his time. It's only move 31, he still has to make 9 more moves to reach time control, and he plays bishop to f4. And it's a good thing that he did, because Caruana was most likely expecting this, and he already had a reply. And here Caruana also had to spend some time to figure out how to go about this. So okay, rook to e8. Finally, Caruana brings this inactive rook from a8 to e8. Knight to e3, preparing knight to f5 with a double attack against the d6 pawn. We have rook captures on g1, rook captures on g1, and now rook to e6. Caruana brings the rook to help out with the defense of the pawn. And Carlsen replies knight to d5. Carlsen really has to play fast, as the time is really low. We have knight to f6, allowing this knight to c7 idea, but Caruana doesn't mind. We have knight to c7 with an attack on the rook, and here rook to e2 was played. Knight to b5 with a double attack against the d6 pawn, and also Carlsen is attacking the a7 pawn. Caruana simply goes back, rook to e6, defends the pawn, and offers his a7 pawn. And if knight captures here, then king to h7 is coming, bishop is coming to h6, the dark square bishops will get exchanged, and then this h5 pawn really is a liability, it will fall sooner or later. So okay, rook to e6, rook to f1 now by Carlsen. We have king to g8, and now knight back to c7, attacking Caruana's rook once again. Caruana played rook to e2, we have knight back to b5 by Carlsen, and Caruana repeats rook to e6. knight back to c7 by Carlsen, and here this was move 40, so time control has been reached. Players received additional time, and after Caruana played rook to e2, both players now reached time control, and they both of them left the board as they really needed to clear their heads. It was really an intensive game and Carlsen was really probably most likely angry with himself that he didn't push for advantage there, because after the game in the interview with Maurice, he said that very soon he realized that f6 was actually the way to go, not knight to g4. But okay, here Carlsen, after considering what to play for a couple of more minutes, he played knight to b5, and as this now qualifies as a threefold repetition of the position, he thought Caruana would, call the arbiter and said, hey, it's a threefold repetition. I want to, ask for a draw, but instead rook to e6 was played by Caruana, and after Carlsen saw this, he didn't really know why Caruana repeated the move. He went for a fourth repetition instead of calling the arbiter or asking for a draw, but then at some point, as we do have it here, the players agreed to a draw after a threefold repetition. You can see that Carlsen was not very pleased, and everyone was watching, checking out what's going to happen. But definitely a very nice moment for Caruana, although it was a beautiful game, and like they mentioned during the live feed, this was the first time that someone actually challenged Caruana's Petrov defense, as when Caruana won the candidates, he actually won 3 games in the candidates with the Petrov defense, with the black pieces, so this is actually a pretty big deal. Someone did ask in the comments, like, why would Carlsen show off what he can do against the Petrov, why not save it for November? But there's a lot of psychology here. I mean, if you win this game here, if you don't allow Caruana to get near you with his rating, then that also will play a part in November. It's not just about saving all the best stuff you're gonna play in November. But yeah, this brings us to the standings after round 7. There you can see Caruana still in the lead with 4.5 points, the sole leader, followed by Grishuk, Mamedyarov, Aryan, and Carlsen with 4 points, then with 3.5, Vishwanathan Anand and Maxim Vacherol-Agraf. Wesley So with 3, Hikaru Nakamura with 2.5, and Karyakin still in last place with 2 points after drawing his game today with Shahriar Mamedyarov. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I'm positive Carlsen didn't, but that's chess. Things always happen when you least expected them. And it was kind of, as he already signalized that in the confessional booth, that he will win this game, quiet to the haters. It was probably a very disgusting experience for him, that when he realized that he will not in fact be winning this game. So yeah, once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Joseph Burnett, Alexandru Epuran, Jack Neved III, David Domini Fowler, and Rick Rowland for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with another interesting video. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.